I'd stayed in Airbnbs before, but I always opted for private rentals, entire apartments or small houses just for myself. This time, though, I decided to save some money. I'd be in Austin for only a few days for a marketing seminar, so I didn't think much about booking a shared Airbnb. The listing described the host as friendly and respectful and mentioned that guests might share the space with others on occasion. It sounded fine to me. The house itself was modest but cozy, with a welcoming atmosphere, a single-story home with a front porch, a small garden, and a bright yellow door. When I arrived, my roommate for the week greeted me at the door. She introduced herself as Kelly. She was tall and slender, with long dark hair and a relaxed vibe. At first glance, she seemed perfectly normal, maybe a little quirky. Her clothes were mismatched, and she had this habit of staring at the ceiling, as though deep in thought. She seemed fine, a bit odd perhaps, but nothing alarming. The host wasn't there, but that didn't seem unusual. Kelly explained that the host often rented out the house while traveling for work and trusted guests to come and go as needed. We chatted for a while, and then I retreated to my room to unpack. That evening, I set up my laptop at the dining table to catch up on emails. Kelly was sitting on the floor in the living room, surrounded by candles. There was no TV or music playing, just a row of small flickering flames and a notebook in her lap. When she noticed me looking over, she said, "Oh, don't mind me. I'm just aligning my energy for the evening." I wasn't sure what she meant by that, but I figured it was harmless. "It's fine," she added with a chuckle. "You probably think I'm weird. I get that a lot. I'm a witch." "A witch?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yep," she said, winking. "Not the broomstick kind, though. More like energy work and rituals. That sort of thing. It's harmless, I promise." I smiled awkwardly and went back to my laptop, unsure of how to respond. I figured, each to their own, and as long as she wasn't performing dark rituals or summoning anything weird, I could deal with a few candles. Over the next few days, Kelly's odd habits became more noticeable. She often hummed a strange, low melody that didn't sound like any song I recognized. She would spend hours in the backyard talking to herself in a language I didn't understand while arranging rocks into odd patterns. Once, I saw her sprinkling something that looked like salt around the perimeter of the house. "Protection," she explained when she noticed me watching. "Keeps bad energy out." But the strangest thing of all was her suitcase. She kept it in the living room, not in her room, and never seemed to open it. It was old and worn, with peeling leather and a rusty clasp. One evening, I couldn't help myself and decided to ask her about it. "Oh, that's just my tools," she said nonchalantly. "Everything I need for my practice." Her tone made it clear she didn't want to explain further, so I didn't press her on it. On my last night there, I came home after dinner to find the house eerily quiet. Kelly was usually in the living room by that time, surrounded by her candles or scribbling in her notebook, but tonight she was nowhere to be found. Her belongings, her suitcase, the candles, even the rocks from the backyard were all still there, but there was no sign of her. I checked the kitchen, the bathroom, and the backyard. Nothing. Her bedroom door was wide open, revealing an empty, unmade bed. By this point, I was more confused than concerned. Maybe she had gone out for a late-night walk or a last-minute errand. Still, it was strange that she hadn't taken any of her things with her. I went to bed, but the house felt different without her presence, heavier somehow. The next morning, Kelly still hadn't returned. I decided to text the host to let them know. To my surprise, the response was immediate and unsettling. "I'm sorry, but I don't know who you're talking about," the host wrote. "There shouldn't be anyone else staying here." What did they mean, no one else? Kelly had been here the whole time. We'd talked, shared meals, even joked about her rituals. She wasn't imaginary. I stared at her suitcase. It was the only thing left in the living room, sitting there like an unanswered question. Against my better judgment, I unlatched the clasp and opened it. The smell hit me first. A mix of old leather, earth, and something metallic. Inside, there were no clothes or toiletries, just a jumbled collection of odd items. A bundle of dried herbs, a cracked mirror, a small vial of reddish liquid, and a stack of handwritten notes. The notes were filled with symbols and phrases I couldn't understand. I slammed the suitcase shut and backed away. Who was Kelly? Why had the host denied knowing her? Grabbing my phone, I called the host. Their voice was calm but firm. I swear I haven't rented to anyone else. You're the only guest I approve. If someone else is there, you need to leave immediately and call the police. I didn't need to be told twice. I packed my things, eyes darting to every shadow and corner. Was Kelly still here, hiding somewhere? Had she been playing some kind of twisted game with me? I spent the night in a hotel, unable to shake the unease that clung to me. The next day, I reported everything to Airbnb. The strange rituals, the host's denial of Kelly's existence. They assured me they would investigate, but I never heard back. To this day, I still don't know who Kelly truly was or what her intentions might have been. All I know is that I will never stay in a shared Airbnb again. The thought of someone like her slipping into my life, even for just a few days, still gives me chills. A few years ago, after my friends and I graduated from high school, we decided to celebrate by visiting the White Mountains National Forest. Since we lived only a couple of hours away, the trip wasn't a massive undertaking. We all piled into my friend Alexis's Hyundai Accent. Along for the trip were Rob, his girlfriend Stephanie, and our friend Kelly. The car was cramped, but we didn't bring much with us. We were headed to an Airbnb in Carroll, New Hampshire, during the peak of summer. The drive was breathtakingly beautiful. When we arrived at the rental, it looked just like the photos, except for a dilapidated shed beside the house that wasn't mentioned in the listing. The shed looked like it could collapse with a gentle push. Alexis joked that maybe some eccentric old man lived in there, and that's why the place was so affordable. We laughed it off and started unpacking. Secretly, I had a crush on Alexis, and I suspected the feeling might be mutual. She suggested we share the pull-out couch in the living room instead of sleeping in the third bedroom, which had 2 exterior doors and faced the old shed. She seemed uneasy about staying there, and I couldn't blame her. The first evening was uneventful. Later that night, we all gathered in the hot tub, located in the garage/rec room. Alexis sat close to me, and we faced the woods while Rob and Stephanie sat across from us. Stephanie, unable to fully submerge herself due to some recent stitches, kept her legs out of the water. We reminisced about high school, joking and sipping on some booze we probably shouldn't have had. Kelly wasn't with us at the time. She had gone to change. At one point, Rob gave me a playful nudge under the water and smirked, clearly noticing how close Alexis was to me. We talked about our plans for the next day, which included hiking Mount Washington and exploring the Flume Gorge. After a good soak, Alexis and I settled on the pull-out couch and watched some Rick and Morty until about 2 a.m. when we decided to step outside to stargaze. Kelly eventually joined us. The deck in front of the house was expansive and perfect for watching the stars. It was eerily quiet, with no cars or planes around. The sky was a stunning mix of purple and blue, littered with stars. As we sat there, Kelly suddenly hushed us. She said she'd heard crunching sounds, like footsteps approaching the deck. I dismissed it as a raccoon or maybe a fox, but the steps grew heavier. Alexis's eyes were locked on the old shed, and I could tell she was scared. Quickly, I ushered everyone inside and locked the doors. I tried reassuring them that it was likely an animal, possibly something living in the shed. Alexis and Kelly calmed down after a while, and Kelly returned to her room. I lay back down with Alexis, but the unease lingered. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of breakfast. Rob and Stephanie were cooking in the kitchen, which was just across from where Alexis and I were sleeping. We had a big day ahead of us. After a full day of hiking, most of us had forgotten the previous night's events, except Alexis. When we got back, Alexis suggested we check out the shed now that it was daylight. I wasn't keen on the idea but didn't want to seem like a coward. We opened the shed's creaky screen door and stepped inside. The first room contained an old, fragile-looking rocking chair. The next door had a rusty, dented brass knob. Alexis groaned as she turned it and pushed the door open. The room beyond was unremarkable. The floor was dirt, the windows were coated in grime, and there was some trash scattered around. Alexis commented that it smelled faintly of cigarette. We figured it might have been a designated smoking spot and didn't think much of it. We joined the others out back, where Rob was starting a fire. We sat around, sharing laughs and stories as the sun set. I turned off the floodlight to enhance the ambience. The conversation flowed easily until we were interrupted by the sound of crunching footsteps near the tree line. These steps were faster than the ones from the previous night and seemed to be heading straight for us. Suddenly, a flash of green light illuminated the backyard. Whatever was approaching stopped in its tracks. Stephanie screamed and bolted for the house. Behind us, a chilling, inhuman cry echoed through the air. At first, it sounded like a siren, but it was far more unsettling. I yelled for everyone to get inside. In my panic, I accidentally knocked over Kelly, who hadn't fully grasped what was happening. I helped her up and then ran to Alexis, helping her gather our food to avoid attracting whatever was out there. Rob was already at the back door, armed with bear spray. I drew my knife as we backed into the house. Rob and I briefly saw a shadowy figure moving near the fire. We didn't stick around to find out what it was. Once inside, we locked all the doors and called the police. An officer arrived, scoured the area with a flashlight, and found nothing. He suggested the green flash was from lightning striking a nearby transformer or power line. As for the creature, he speculated it might have been a fisher cat. However, Stephanie insisted she saw a hunched figure draped in a cloak or blanket. The fear was too much for us to stay another night. We packed up and left, vowing never to return to those mountains. To this day, we're haunted by the thought of what might still be lurking out there. At 26, I still live with my parents, feel dissatisfied with my job, and have doubts about my relationship. To say I was overwhelmed would be a massive understatement. My mom and I weren't on good terms one week, and everyone seemed to be getting on my nerve. I decided I needed a break for a weekend. Searching online, I found a small, one-bedroom Airbnb cabin nestled in the mountains. It was located in Troutdale, Virginia, a couple of hours away, and it looked serene and private from the pictures. A perfect escape surrounded by woods. The timing was ideal since it was fall, and the autumn colors would be stunning. I informed my parents about my plans for the weekend. My mom seemed unusually thrilled about my temporary departure, while my girlfriend appeared puzzled, finding it strange and suspicious that I wanted to retreat to a secluded cabin in the woods alone. When Friday came, I packed a backpack with clothes, toiletries, and my laptop, then hit the road. The drive took about 2.5 hours. Troutdale was peaceful and picturesque, a refreshing contrast to the suburban monotony of home. I followed my GPS along a gravel road until it indicated I had arrived. Spotting an opening in the trees beside the road, I followed the Airbnb host's instructions to drive through it, up a grassy hill. At the top sat the charming little house. The moment I stepped out of the car, I inhaled the crisp country air and instantly felt I'd made the right choice. Following the host's directions, I retrieved the key to the cabin and let myself inside. The space was cozy, with a small living room, a compact kitchen, a bathroom, and a loft bedroom accessed by a ladder-like staircase. The bedroom featured a circular window above the bed, allowing natural light to flood the cabin, which I love. I decided to explore some nearby trails that the host had recommended, which were about a 5-minute drive away. On my return to the cabin, I noticed 2 men walking down the gravel road. As my car passed them, they stopped in their tracks to stare at me. I smiled and waved, assuming they were locals, but they didn't respond. Their cold, almost hostile expressions made me uneasy. I didn't dwell on it, though, and drove back up the hill to the cabin. Inside, I settled into the living room, lighting the fireplace and starting a book I had brought. The ambience was incredibly calming. As the sun began to set, I realized I was hungry. Stepping outside to go to my car, I caught sight of two men darting into the woods near the property entrance. It seemed they were reacting to seeing me. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was the same men from the road earlier. Feeling uneasy, I decided to take my laptop and backpack with me to town, just in case. On my way to the nearest Walmart, I messaged the host about what I'd observed. He reassured me, claiming that local teens often wandered the area, so I brushed it off. The drive to Walmart was about 20 minutes since the area had no closer grocery stores. I grabbed essentials: milk, granola bars, fruit, frozen dinners, bread, and cold cut. By the time I returned, darkness had completely enveloped the area. The lack of streetlights on the gravel roads and the isolation of the cabin made the surroundings eerie. Using my headlights, I found my way back up the hill to the house. Carrying my backpack and groceries, I used my phone's flashlight to navigate the dark yard. Once inside, I locked the door immediately, feeling a wave of relief. After a quick meal, I returned to the living room to read by the fire. Then, without warning, the lights went out, leaving the fireplace as the only source of illumination. I tried flipping light switches, but nothing worked. The power was completely out. I messaged the host, who quickly responded, advising me to check the main breaker in the circuit box by the telephone pole behind the house. But there was no way I was venturing outside in the dark, especially with my earlier paranoia. Then I heard it, a creak on the floorboards coming from the shadowy corner near the bathroom door. My eyes darted toward the noise, and there, barely visible in the glow of the fire, stood a tall, menacing figure in the doorway. My heart sank. This was no hallucination. Someone was inside. In a low, unsettling voice, the intruder instructed me to stay calm and hand over everything valuable. Shaking with fear, I stammered that all I had was my laptop and some clothes. He demanded I empty my wallet, so I complied, tossing the cash onto the floor. He then ordered me to move to the kitchen and stay there. Moments later, I heard the front door close. I cautiously returned to the living room, only to find my laptop, backpack, and money gone. Trembling, I dialed 911 to report the robbery. A police officer arrived about 20 minutes later. I described the two men I'd seen earlier, suspecting they might have been involved. The officer assured me they would keep an eye out but offered little else. When I informed the host about the break-in, he seemed sympathetic at first. However, he refused to refund me for the terrifying ordeal. What was meant to be a relaxing getaway turned into one of the most harrowing experiences of my life. While the financial loss was minimal, the psychological impact was profound. Part of me can't help but wonder if the host might have been complicit, as I still can't fathom how the intruder gained access to the locked house. I rent out my house in South Carolina on Airbnb whenever I'm not staying there. It's a cozy 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home near the beach. 2 of the bedrooms are open for guests, while the master bedroom is off-limits. I keep it locked with my personal belongings inside, including clothes and some other items. It's a hassle to carry everything back and forth every time I visit, so I've secured it with both a standard lock and a deadbolt. Unless someone breaks the door down or smashes a window, no one's getting in there. I don't store anything extremely valuable inside, just my wardrobe and personal effects. This happened early last spring when it was still chilly up in Massachusetts, where I live most of the year. I decided to drive down to my South Carolina house for the week. Luckily, I work remotely most of the time, so I have the flexibility to make trips like this. Normally, I hire a cleaning service to tidy up after each guest leaves, and the cost is included in the rental price on Airbnb. However, since I planned to arrive right after the latest guests left, I decided to skip hiring the cleaner and just do it myself, keeping the cleaning fee for myself. The last person to stay was a guy named Ramon. Through our messages, he mentioned he was renting the house with his fiancée and asked for restaurant recommendations in the area. He seemed trustworthy. I usually prefer renting to couples or small groups of women rather than groups of young men, as they're less likely to party excessively and potentially damage the place. I set out on the drive early in the morning. It's about a 16-hour journey, with only short stops for food and bathroom break. By the time I arrived, it was around 10 p.m. Exhausted, I unlocked the front door and went back to my car to grab my bags before heading inside. I was so drained from the drive that I didn't bother inspecting the house for cleanliness or mess. I went straight to the master bedroom, unlocked the door, and collapsed onto the bed without even brushing my teeth. If you've ever driven for 16 hours straight, you know how completely it wears you out. I crawled under the blankets and fell asleep almost instantly. But my sleep didn't last long. I woke up in a dark room. The clock on the nightstand showed it was 11:30 p.m., so I'd only been asleep for a little over an hour. Something had startled me awake. Out of habit, I grabbed my phone to check for messages, then turned on the bedside lamp. I glanced around the room, but everything seemed normal. Getting up, I decided to check the rest of the house. Nothing appeared out of place. The living room was tidy, and there wasn't a single sign of disturbance, not even a pillow out of alignment. I went to the guest bedrooms. Both were empty, though one bed had clearly been used. It seemed like Ramon and his fiancée had stayed but left everything in excellent condition. They might have been the tittiest guests I'd ever hosted. Curious, I opened the app for my front porch camera, which records any movement. The footage showed a man entering the house 3 days earlier using the code lock. He was alone, there was no woman with him. That struck me as odd. I reviewed the footage repeatedly but didn't find any additional activity between his arrival and my own. A chill ran down my spine. I messaged Ramon on Airbnb, asking if he'd checked out okay. It was late, but I needed answers. Then, I started inspecting the bedrooms more thoroughly. I checked under the beds and inside every closet, yanking open doors quickly like ripping off a bandage. Every closet was empty. Feeling uneasy, I went back to the living room and sat down to reread my conversation with Ramon. That's when I heard the master bedroom door softly click shut. It wasn't the kind of noise caused by a draft. Someone had deliberately closed it. My heart raced as I turned to face the door. The light was still on inside, visible through the crack at the bottom. I got on my hands and knees to look under the door and froze. I could see 2 feet standing just a couple of steps away from the door. I stumbled backward in shock. Panicking, I ran to the kitchen, planning to grab the largest carving knife from the knife block. But when I got there, the knife was already missing. My options were limited. The safest choice was to leave the house and call 911, so that's exactly what I did. I waited outside until the police arrived. When they entered the house with me, Ramon was calmly sitting in the living room, acting as though nothing was wrong. He spoke with a Portuguese accent and claimed he'd needed a place to stay for one more night. His story didn't add up. He also denied taking the knife, which had mysteriously reappeared in the knife block by then. The police spent about half an hour questioning both of us. 2 officers spoke with me while the others talked to Ramon outside. To my disbelief, they let him go, advising me to contact Airbnb to resolve the matter. I was stunned. It felt like they hadn't taken the situation seriously at all. After everyone left, I immediately changed the lock code and contacted Airbnb to report what had happened. Although they didn't compensate me for the extra day Ramon had squatted in the house, they assured me he was permanently banned from the platform. Still, it didn't feel like justice. I couldn't shake the thought that he might have been waiting in my bedroom, potentially planning to harm me. If these Airbnb horror stories have made you reconsider your next booking, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more spine-tingling tales. Have you ever had a strange or unsettling travel experience? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear all the eerie details. Don't forget to send this video to a friend who's obsessed with vacation rentals. They might think twice before their next stay. And remember, a high rating doesn't always guarantee a safe experience. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.